Long ago, the great Frith.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Animation Pilgrimage, where Tennille and I take a look at every single theatrically released animated film in chronological order. I'm Sean.
Who am I? I'm Tennille.
Yeah. And today we're recording in a new studio because
yes, we are.
We moved. And so if the audio quality is different, that's why. And we're working on it.
We're working on it. Hopefully this sounds fine though. Technical stuff aside, we're finally here.
Mm-hmm.
To a film that people have been asking for since the very beginning of this project. Actually, before this project even started, because we started doing reviews before that. And yeah, people love Watership Down, man. It's Watership Down time.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? It deserves all the hype.
I mean, yeah, it grows on me more every time I watch it.
That's what I wrote down too. Because actually, before we rewatched it, I was like, I'm going to have some hot takes on Watership Down. I don't think it's as good as everybody says it is. And then we watched it again and I was like, you know what? I'm wrong. This is pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a good movie. I don't really have anything bad to say about it. I mean, maybe not like anything bad, but you know, just like it's a good movie.
Mm-hmm. It knows what it wanted to do and it did it, and it scarred a lot of children because they didn't think about it.
Yeah.
And also not so much them, but like the nature of film was in a bad state, so animated things were not regulated correctly.
Yeah, we can get more into that later.
Yeah.
But you know, like, this movie grows on me every time I see it. I just notice new details whenever I watch this movie. It was made with a pretty small crew, and this is one of those films where it's beautifully unpolished. You can see a lot of the touches individual artists have made, and that's really cool. I love seeing films like that because, like, especially here in Watership Down, you can tell that there was like 5 different background artists and they all drew backgrounds differently. And like they all bring something different to the table, and like it changes the art direction a bit, but also it doesn't, because it's just like a different take on this, you know, realistic yet kind of surrealist. Is surrealist in the way that, like, we're seeing this from the animal's perspective. Kind of, you know, environmental movie. It's neat.
Okay. How about we do a brief story synopsis? Because I'm going to be honest, the plot is actually very straightforward.
Oh, yeah. Well, most of the movie is like a road trip film. So it's the rabbits getting from point A to point B.
Yeah. But, so, speaking of which, the main character's name is Hazel, and he's generic good guy bunny. And he has a younger brother who is a runt, and his name is Fiver. And Fiver has the ability to have visions of the future, and he can see bad things that are happening, or good things sometimes. And he realizes that the burrow is in grave danger. He sees a field of blood, everyone's gonna die, so he starts running around screaming like a lunatic, and some people manage to listen to him, and they sneak out in the middle of the night, even though the chief of the burrow is like, nah, don't do that. So Hazel, Fiver, and like maybe, I don't know,
10 other rabbits?
10 other rabbits at most. Leave. Everyone else that tried to leave with them is stopped by, like, the burrow police.
The burrow police?
I mean, am I wrong?
No, they're definitely the burrow police. Notably, one of the burrow police joins them, Bigwig.
Yeah, Bigwig eventually joins them. I guess I've actually skipped something very important.
You skipped the fable at the beginning.
Yeah, I skipped the fable at the beginning where it
sets up all the lore.
The lore of the world. Frith, aka the sun, has created all the creatures of the earth, and that includes the rabbits. I don't remember what the Prince of the Rabbits is named.
El Ferrar. Or
Elefrera.
Elef-
Elefrera.
Elefrerar.
Elefrera. Anyways, Elefrera is quickly reproducing much faster than any other animal and eating all of the food.
And all the animals at this point eat grass.
Are vegetarian, yeah.
Yeah.
So Frith is like, hey, how dare you? And the rabbit's like, screw you. So he's like, all right, I'm blessing all these other animals to also eat rabbits and are carnivores and stuff, and like advances all of them. And essentially...
They have an insatiable desire to kill your kind.
Mm-hmm. So Elefrera becomes the prince with 1,000 enemies.
Mm-hmm.
And he does bless him with...
Frith blesses Elefrerar with the gift of speed.
Speed and trickery and such.
Yeah.
So it blesses them, and they must constantly run and be smarter, otherwise they'll die.
Well, yeah, it's... you'll have many enemies, prince with 1,000 enemies, and if they catch you, they will kill you. But first, they must catch you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that just kind of sets up how rabbits live and think.
Mm-hmm.
So anyways, Hazel and Fiver and Bigwig and these others travel, and they run across many dangers like dogs and foxes and birds and rats and humans traps and lunatical rabbit societies that are death cults and other fun things. But eventually they make it to a very tall secluded hill with a single tree on top and an empty warren perfect for them to live, and it's great, except
they don't have any female rabbits.
They don't have any girls. The only girl got carried off by a bird on the way over.
Yeah.
So they try to free the rabbits from the local farm, and Hazel gets shot, and so that didn't go well.
He doesn't die, but he nearly dies.
He nearly dies.
And we get the Simon and Garfunkel. Well, it's not Simon and Garfunkel. It's just Garfunkel song, Bright Eyes,
which is quite good.
Mm-hmm.
It's a good song. And dance, like the symbology is like Hazel dancing with death with the black rabbit.
The Black Rabbit of Death, yeah.
But they manage to heal him because they have found and helped a local, or a seagull, essentially.
Who hurt his wing, and then they help nurse him back to health, and then they kind of like convince him to help
them find female rabbits for them.
Yeah.
And they do. And they find that there is a different Mondo burrow, like super huge burrow with like an incredibly aggressive, evil rabbit leader, Warren. Also, another member of the police from their original Warren has escaped from this other new Warren because the old Warren did get destroyed and everybody died.
Well, what I love is that, like, so at the beginning of the movie, you see Fiver freaking out about blood in the field, and you don't know what he's talking about, really. But then when you see them leave, you see the sign that, like, oh, new property is going to be built here.
Mm-hmm.
And then later on, we get to see the outcome of that. And yeah, one of the old police rabbits, I forget his name. Holly? Commander Holly.
Yeah, Commander Holly.
Commander Holly. Yeah, he comes in and he's like, what happened to the old burrow? You were right, Fiver. It was horrible. Like, they just
filled in all the holes and suffocated the rabbits, and like everybody tried to escape, and dead bodies clogging the exits, and like the visuals for this section are haunting, surreal, disturbing.
Yeah. I know a lot of people point to the gore and the violence of this film as being the disturbing part, but this scene was always the one that got me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think this is more like this is straight up out of a horror movie kind of imagery here, and the descriptions as well. Like, it's fantastic, and like it to me is like the most memorable thing from this film is this sequence. But anyway, after Commander Hully, he manages to escape the old Warren that our original crew left.
Mm-hmm.
And he finds, these
super militaristic
fascist bunnies.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of bunnies, like an overabundance.
Led by Captain or Commander Wormwort.
Yes. And so Bigwig manages to sneak his way in there, and they find that there's a small faction of female bunnies that are trying to leave and start a new warren, and...
I mean, it's so bad in this warren that, like, a lot of the female rabbits can't produce a litter of kits.
Mm-hmm.
Even if they try, just because, like, they're too stressed and there's, like, too many of them. But yeah, like, everyone in this warren gets, like, a mark on them, telling them, like, when and where they're supposed to be at certain times, and, like, it's a scary place.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, our heroes, like, infiltrate inside.
Sneak a bunch of people out.
Commander Wormwort thinks that Bigwig is the chief rabbit of their warren.
So he comes after them.
Yeah.
And Fiver has another vision, and this gives Hazel the idea to go to the local farm where he got shot, releases the dog...
And they, like, relay race to get him back.
Get the dog up to the hill, and the dog, like, kills all of the attacking rabbits.
Mm-hmm.
And then the good guys get to live happily ever after on their hill with lots of rabbit babies. And then eventually Hazel, being the new Warren leader, lives a good life, and then he dies.
He greets the Black Rabbit of Death. You
Happily.
know, with open arms.
He's like, I had a good life, let's go.
Yeah.
And then he bounds off and the movie ends.
Bright eyes, dun, dun, like fire.
Burning like fire.
Yeah, that.
It's a very straightforward line.
But yeah, it's a story about life and death and rabbits and all that good stuff and journeying. This is a very influential book that it was based off of that basically started, like, the whole trend of animal
stories.
Yeah, animal fantasy stories. And it's still probably one of the best of its genre.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't pull punches.
No. Some of the rabbit science in it is a little questionable. But, I mean, other than getting into the nitpicks of that, like, it's a good book. And this was a good movie. So...
It feels very down to earth, which is a weird thing to say.
Yeah. I mean, it's very, very unique. There's not a lot of movies like this. And probably won't... I mean, we're getting to the point where animation's kind of... being more widely accepted by, like, different age groups.
Mm-hmm.
But, like, it's a long, ongoing battle. And Watership Down, I think, will always stand the test of time as, like, one of these films that just really, really stands out and isn't really marketed for a particular audience. It's very niche, and yet a lot of people know about it at the same time.
Yeah.
And, you know, my main criticisms for this movie is that it is more so of a book rather than a movie, structurally, you know? Like,
yeah,
they do make changes to make this work in a movie format, but even while watching it, it still feels like a book.
So it does have a slightly slower pace.
Mm-hmm. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. The flip side of that coin is that I think what makes this movie stand out as more than just a book adaptation is the distinct visual style of it. You know, the way the lore is set up in the beginning of the film as this, like, beautiful Aboriginal art is something that's so iconic to the movie. the bright eyes sequence and the way the Black Rabbit of Death is portrayed visually, the way the haunting burrow destruction scene is portrayed, is something that, like, can only be done through animation.
Yeah.
And it is something that, like, like those three things alone make this film stand out as more than just a book adaptation. And then just another note I have about this movie in general is that despite its infamy for being a traumatizing children's movie, the film stands out on its own and is more than just that. You know, there's been a lot of movies that we've watched on Animation Pilgrimage where the movie is dark and edgy for dark and edgy's sake.
Mm-hmm.
And this isn't that.
Yeah, it's just being realistic, which makes it very dark, but it was not intentional to be that way, just to be edgy.
Yeah, it's not done just to be cool,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Ooh, we killed things.
Right.
And then everybody died.
And then what's also kind of fun about this movie is the way that, you know, we talk about it now in pop culture. It's this film, Plague Dogs, and Felidae, especially, these three films, sort of feel like a rite of passage for a lot of people of like, oh, I watched this movie when I was this age, and, you know, this is how it affected me, and I still remember the first time I've seen this. And that's fun. Like, I think that's a really wonderful experience that a movie like this could leave an impact that's not just about the film itself, but it's about, like, who you were when you watched it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot of that comes down to the fact that even today,
Mm-hmm.
those three films they're not kids' films.
Mm-hmm.
But people see, I don't know, Animated Rabbit. It's for kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of people that are generally under the age of when they should be watching it are watching these films.
Mm-hmm.
And it traumatizes them.
Because we don't have, like, we don't have a good market for animated films that aren't either strictly for adults or strictly for children.
Mm-hmm.
So when we actually get films that fit into this niche, you know, kids end up watching it.
Mm-hmm.
And of course it traumatizes them, or it doesn't. You know, there's plenty of people, myself included, who watched it and wasn't necessarily traumatized by it, but it definitely left a lasting impact on me.
Like, I definitely think this is something that's A-okay for someone, like, once they're getting into, like, their teenage years to go ahead and watch, because once you get to that point, you'll actually start understanding a lot of the context of what's going on in, like, the political sense of the rabbits.
Right.
Like, you'll get that much, and also you'll get some enjoyment out of the actual violence there, and it won't be scarring.
Right. I mean, this is for the same age group that would read the books, you know? If you're old enough to have read the book, you're probably old enough to see the movie, although I still will, you know, cling to my belief that reading something dark and tragic and edgy is a lot easier than seeing it.
Yes. Because if you're reading something horrible, it can only ever be as horrible as your brain can imagine it.
Which sometimes is worse.
Which is sometimes worse. But on the flip side, with a visual medium, it can only be as bad as what the people making it want it to be. So if they think it looks bad, they're like they will restrict it, but that could still be a lot more than what you're prepared for. So it can be
it could be worse than
overstimulating. Yeah.
I mean, for some people though, like reading a book, they don't necessarily imagine the thing. They read it and they process that, but then seeing it visually maybe puts it into a clearer picture.
Yeah, because I mean, this just gets down to how some people process. This is going off on a tangent, but I think it's a very good tangent. It's talking about some people say, imagine an apple in your head, and what do you see? Is it black and white? Do you only see the word apple? Do you see a fully realistic apple? Is it kind of like the semi-formed, like, children's image of, like, a cartoon apple?
Do you recall a picture of an apple you've seen before? Can you move that apple around in 3D space?
Mm-hmm. And, like, certain people can only get so far with that because everybody's brains works differently.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of what I mean is, like, with a book, you can only imagine so much, and some people can't do a lot of the extra visualization, but other people, they can imagine all the details and they can walk around the scene and see all of it.
Right. Well, I mean, and it's different if, you read a line in a book and it says, the dog tore the rabbit to shreds. You go, oh no, that's awful. But then if you saw that, like...
You're just like,
say,
oh!
A picture's worth 1,000 words.
It's a little bit different.
It's a little different. And that's why it's so hard to adapt, this genre of books and, like, this age group. Because if you actually adapt the source material, you're making it for a age range that is now older than what the source material is going for, you know? Like this book could be read by a 10-year-old. Should a 10-year-old watch this movie? I don't know. Depends on the 10-year-old.
Yeah. I mean, again, it comes down to a very child-to-child basis.
Person-to-person basis. Yeah. So, anyway, all that talk about, like, the traumatizing aspects of Watership Down aside, there is a lot of interesting history behind this movie as well. So, the project was originally picked up by Martin Rosen, who was the producer, and he wanted to, produce this film, so he got the rights to it, and he hired John Hubley, our good old John Hubley, to direct. And Hubley directed this movie for a little while, I think for the first year or so of production. He's mainly credited for giving us the Aboriginal folklore scene, which, when you think about it, really makes a whole lot of sense. John Hubley was a UPA guy, created Mr. Magoo, is very familiar with stylization, so this feels right up his alley. The folklore section has a little bit more animal, like, slapstick kind of humor to it, while also still keeping its serious tone. So yeah, you can really see John Hubley's work in that scene in particular. I think he also helped lay down some of the initial, art direction for the film as a whole, and a lot of the way that the story was going to be structured, as an animated film versus as a book. However, there were some disagreements between him and Martin partway through production. John Hubley ended up leaving, and this was the last film Hubley ever worked on before his death of a heart attack. Martin Rosen then picked up directing, which is something he'd never done before, and ended up seeing this project through to the end. And I think, from accounts that I can see of it, it sounds like Martin veered a little bit away from what Hubley was doing, because obviously they had disagreements about something, so, sounds like he tried to veer it back a little bit more to being more like the book, and so I think that gives, like, an interesting dynamic between these two different visions of what this should be. And then, yeah, there's just... It's really interesting seeing the different styles between, like, these two directors. Of course, the most infamous thing about this movie is, of course, the dark nature of it. And when this film was released in 1979, it got a U rating in the UK, which is the same as America's E rating.
Or G.
Or G rating. So
not even PG.
Not even PG.
G.
Gee.
Everyone can watch this film, you know, with the blood and the violence and the... yeah, that seems okay.
And we just have to quote this. When the British Board of Film Classification gave Watership Down a U for Universal... Oh, I think I said 1979 earlier. 1978. That's the year we're in.
Mm-hmm.
U for Universal. It opined that although it may move children emotionally during the film's duration, it could not seriously trouble them once the spell of the story was broken.
Uh-huh.
Oops. And I just want to say that since this movie has come out, the British Board of Film Classification has gotten complaints about the rating of this film every single year. Up to this year, they get complaints about the rating of Watership Down.
Well, then change it.
Yeah, I mean... I just think that's fascinating, though. Like, how did they watch this movie and go, yeah, this is fine? A 4-year-old could watch this.
I don't understand.
Why?
It's not humans committing violence. Yeah, it's animals, which is worse.
Uh-huh. Oh my god. But I also want to say, this is from, I do own a special collector's edition of Watership Down. And it came with this nice little pamphlet inside, written by, Gerard Jones. And at the end of it, he talks a little bit about the history of the film. But there's a nice little paragraph at the end, and it says, "My wife and I read Watership Down with our son when he was 10, and soon after we finished, we showed him the movie. 12 years later, he still says it's his favorite novel, and he still feels the movie does well by it. He admires it most because its makers were willing to be dark." That word dark is used a lot in movie talk, but usually to mean some combination of self-consciously cynical and manipulative cruelty. In the fantasy business, it's worn as a badge of tough-mindedness and sophistication, although usually with that adolescent look at me for not being childish pose. Few movies embrace the real dark the way this one does. The dark of the night, of dreams, of sorrow and terror and peace. And of course, it's against that darkness that the light looks brightest. Which is why the bright moments of Watership Down can be so simple, so understated, and yet so transportative. It's why the ending, which I won't reveal, but which you'll know long before the movie is over, is inevitable and right. It's as joyous as it is poignant. Yeah, and I think that's extremely fitting for why Watership Down is so unique.
Mm-hmm.
And as a final note, I also want to read from a book I use a lot in Animation Pilgrimage, Of Mice and Magic, A History of American Animated Cartoons, even though this was an American animated movie. This book's written by Leonard Maltin, and he talks about Watership Down briefly, and talks about how this film was part of, this string of movies that we've seen after the success of Fritz the Cat, where, a lot of people were jumping on like, ooh, we can make these darker animated films and people will watch them. Oh, maybe not. So throughout the 70s and into the early 1980s, a number of well-meaning people learned the hard way that this simply wasn't so. Producer Martin Rosen hired animation veteran John Hubley to direct an adaptation of Richard Adams' bestseller Watership Down, an animal fable of struggle and survival. Hubley eventually left the project, and Rosen had to assume the director reins himself. Despite the project's rocky beginnings, Watership Down is one of the finest animated feature films ever made. It is also one of the most serious animated feature films ever made. The only comic relief is a bird character, voiced with gusto by Zero Mostel, who breaks the mood of tension as a group of rabbits attempts to find a new safe home. The film met with considerable acclaim, but the question of how to sell it remained. There was an animated cartoon with animal characters that wasn't intended for kids. Adults simply didn't respond to the idea of seeing an animated feature. Rosen's subsequent feature, adapted from Richard Adams' The Plague Dogs in 1982, was even more uncompromising in its drama, and sad to say, never received full theatrical distribution or the praise it deserved.
And we'll talk more about that movie when we get to it.
I'm so excited for that one. I'm really excited. I really love that movie. I love that movie a lot more than I like Watership Down, and I've just spent the last, half hour, 25 minutes or so talking about Watership Down and what a good movie it is. So, yeah.
So, yes, Watership Down, it's actually very well done. The animation feels good. I mean, there's still
a lot of
little
hype
bit of
for this
roughness
movie.
here and there.
There's a lot of hype for this movie, or story in particular. And, it can be a lot sometimes, but it's still definitely a film worth checking out.
I would say this is a movie that actually does live up to the ridiculous amount of hype that it has. I mean, it's not going to be the be-all, end-all movie that you've ever seen, but
right,
it's good.
Like I said earlier, it's still got that unpolishedness to it. There are certainly flaws in the voice work and editing and stuff like that, but it is a very good film, and there's a reason that it keeps getting adapted.
Well, either way, I think that's going to be it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for watching, and next time, we're moving on to Metamorphosis, also known as Winds of Change. So, okay.
See you then.